Good morning, third graders. I can't believe that it's already Friday. This week has just flown by. These 2 weeks have really flown by. I can't wait to start teaching you on Monday. I know I've been checking in quite a bit since we haven't seen each other, but I'm excited to actually get into math and reading on Monday, so I hope that you guys are ready for that too. I'm so excited this morning because Hank brought up Harriet Tubman to talk about for Women's History Month. Now, I know that we already talked about Harriet Tubman during Black History Month. However, because she's such an important figure, I think that we should talk about her again for Women's History Month. Now, in history, we've been learning a lot about slavery and how it was a horrible institution and how cruel it was to pull people from their homes in Africa and make them laborers in the United States. Well, it's also really important that we recognize the people who helped slaves to freedom during that time in our country's history. And Harriet Tubman was one of the most well-known conductors on the Underground Railroad. So, because I was so excited that Hank brought up Harriet Tubman, I did a lot of research on her this morning, and I found two really cool articles that I want to share with you. The first one is from pbs.org, and it's just a little biography about her life. I know that we've done already a little bit of study on her biography, but this one goes a little bit deeper. Harriet Tubman is perhaps the most well-known of all the Underground Railroad's conductors. During a 10-year span, she made 19 trips into the South and escorted over 300 slaves to freedom. And, as she once proudly pointed out to Frederick Douglass, in all of her journeys, she never lost a single passenger. Tubman was born a slave in Maryland's Dorchester County around 1820. Remember, they didn't mark down when slaves were actually born, so historians guess around 1820. 1820 to 1822 is when they think that she was born. At age 5 or 6, she began to work as a house servant. Also, fun fact, or kind of a sad fact if we think about it, when Harriet Tubman was 5, her mother was sent into the bakehouse to work. So she often was left tasked with watching her younger brothers and sisters at the age of 5. So she was about the age of a young kindergartner, and she had to be watching her younger brothers and sisters. That's pretty sad. 7 years later, she was sent to work in the fields. While she was still in her early teens, she suffered an injury that would follow her for the rest of her life. Always ready to stand up for someone else, Tubman blocked a doorway to protect another field hand from an angry overseer. The overseer picked up and threw a 2-pound weight at the field hand. It fell short, striking Tubman on the head. She never fully recovered from the blow, which subjected her to spells in which she would fall into a deep sleep and she also had seizures, I read on another website. So the overseer is someone who would kind of sit on a horse and watch the slaves in the field to make sure that they were doing their jobs. And it sounds like the overseer was angry with one of the people working in the fields. And instead of helping the overseer capture this person, she helped the slave, and she got hit in the head, which affected her for the rest of her life. Around 1844, she married a free black man named John Tubman and took his last name. She was born Araminta Ross. She later changed her name to Harriet after her mother. In 1849, in fear that she, along with other slaves on the plantation, was to be sold, Tubman resolved to run away. She set out one night on foot. With some assistance from a friendly white woman, Tubman was on her way. She followed the North Star by night, making her way to Pennsylvania and soon after to Philadelphia, where she found work and saved her money. The following year, she returned to Maryland and escorted her sister and her sister's 2 children to freedom. She made the dangerous trip back to the South soon after to rescue her brother and 2 other men. On her third return, she went after her husband, only to find that he had taken another wife. Undeterred, she found other slaves seeking freedom and escorted them back to the North. Tubman returned to the South again and again. She devised clever techniques that helped her make 4 ways successful, including using the master's horse and buggy for the last leg of the journey, Leaving on a Saturday night, since runaways notices couldn't be placed in newspapers until Monday morning, turning about and heading south as she encountered possible slave hunters, and carrying a drug to use on a baby if its crying might put the fugitives in danger. Tubman even carried a gun, which she used to threaten the fugitives if they became too tired or decided to turn back, telling them, "You'll be free or die." In 1856, Tubman's capture would have brought a $40,000 reward from the South. That would be a lot more money today. On one occasion, she overheard some men regarding her wanted poster, which stated that she was illiterate. She promptly pulled out a book and feigned reading it, so faked to read it. The ploy was enough to fool the men. Tubman had made the perilous trip to slave country 19 times. By 1860, including one especially challenging journey for which she rescued 70-year-old parents. Of the famed heroine, who was known as Moses, Frederick Douglass said, "Excepting John Brown, of sacred memory, I know of no one who has willingly encountered more perils and hardships to serve our enslaved people than Harriet Tubman." And John Brown, who conferred with General Tubman about his plans to raid Harper's Ferry once, said that she was one of the bravest persons on this continent. Becoming friends with the leading abolitionists of the day, Tubman took part in anti-slavery meetings. On the way to such a meeting in Boston in 1860, in an incident in Troy, New York, she helped a fugitive slave who had been captured. During the Civil War, Harriet Tubman worked for the Union as a cook, a nurse, and even a spy. After the war, she settled in Auburn, New York, where she would spend the rest of her long life. She died in 1913. So a few other interesting facts that I learned about Harriet Tubman this morning was that at first, when she was helping slaves to escape, she would bring them to the North, where slavery was illegal. But at one point, there was an act that was passed that said that any slave that had escaped to freedom was a fugitive. And if you caught them, they could be returned to the South and returned to their masters. So when that happened, Harriet Tubman changed the route of the Underground Railroad. And she changed it so that escaped slaves would not just go to the North, they would go to Canada, where slavery was illegal. So that was something that I found really interesting. When I first learned about the Underground Railroad, I was probably in 3rd grade too, and I imagined a train going under the earth, kind of like a subway. That's not actually what the Underground Railroad was. The Underground Railroad was a series of houses and secret pathways from the south to the north. So a lot of times the stops on the Underground Railroad would just be somebody's house that was willing to help escaped slaves. And then they would sneak through woods and other pathways where they wouldn't be spotted. So that's a little bit of an explanation about the Underground Railroad. Now, I also found this other really cool article. I will put the links to both of these articles on this video. So this I thought was really cool. So this article is called Harriet Tubman Spy. Now, instead of reading this one like I read the last article, I'm going to post this on this video, and then I'll also put it on the email that I send your parents today so that you can read through her job as a spy during the Civil War. So you'll learn more about the Civil War in 4th grade, and I hope that you'll all go into 4th grade kind of being Harriet Tubman experts, and you can impress your teachers by knowing a lot about her. All right, well, I'll see you guys later, and have an awesome weekend. Happy Friday. See you later.